Hi, I'm Derek Donahue. I'm the lead gameplay designer on WWE 2K25.
So Derek, what does being lead combat designer entail? Do you touch every system from strikes to grapples to submissions?
Yeah, the gameplay team as a whole, I mean, we cover pretty much everything that happens bell to bell and some stuff outside of that as well. So yeah, strikes, grapples, submissions, pins, everything you think of that happens in a wrestling match is the gameplay team's purview.
As you design the combat systems, do you have any say in what moves make it into the game?
Absolutely, yeah. So every time we're designing a new system, there's usually contextual attacks that relate to it. An example would be barricade diving this year. Obviously, we implement the dives that you perform off of the barricade against a standing opponent, against an opponent on the ground at ringside. But then you have to think about what happens if someone attacks the person on the barricade. So we design all the attacks there. And then it comes to superstar movesets, right? We get new people on the roster. We want to make sure we get their finishers, their classic moves they perform, as well as just good moves to add to the library every year. So that's a big part of what gameplay does.
What are some of the bigger challenges in that? Because that's a lot of mechanics happening at once in the ring. I mean, this is a fighting game, essentially.
It is, yeah. We talk about what is wrestling a fighting game at part, and there's a lot of similarity, but it also has its own thing to it, right? And that's often hard for someone to understand when they come to the project new. There are a million gameplay systems all interacting. You know, you have recovery and feeding and strikes and submissions, reversals and breakers and combos and all that. It's definitely a challenge anytime we want to integrate a new system into this and make it really sing and work with everything else.
Is there a particular combat mechanic that's really hard to implement?
I'd say one thing that comes to mind is the referee, right? Referee needs to interface with so many different things the player is doing. Even just the idea of where does the referee stand in the ring, right? The ring can get extremely crowded and having the referee move around. And then, of course, last year we introduced the ability to play as the referee, right? With special guest referee. Required us to redo all of our systems that you choose when you go down for a pin count. We redid how pins work because instead of it just being 3 chances, now it's when does the chance happen is a big part of it. Are people going to count fast, count slow? So redoing all that, and of course this year we extended special guest referee to be working at any match types. And there's the question of what does a special guest referee do in a tag team match now? What do they do if it's Hell in a Cell? How do they handle climbing on top of the cell? So you just have to kind of take a single mechanic and apply it to everything else that already exists in the game and figure out what combinations players are going to try in the game, and we want to make sure we support that.
What's involved in making a simulation-heavy combat game without overwhelming players?
That is, I think, is the core challenge. I think people rightfully want everything that happens in wrestling to happen in our game, and that's what we want too. But finding a way to distill that into a system that people can understand quickly, but still gives them the freedom of expression, the freedom to explore all the different ways that happens in game. It's one of the biggest challenges of our game. I think it's going to be something we're working on for the next 10 years, is trying to perfect that.
Developers of an annual franchise often face tough schedules, knowing they need to focus on the next product. When they're still working on the current one, how do you make substantial improvements or design entirely new systems while facing that schedule?
I can tell the person writing these questions definitely is familiar with the challenges in this game. Yeah, working at an annual title is a blessing and a curse. I love it because it means we get to actually release something to fans every year. And it gives us a chance to see how people engage with something, and that informs how the next evolution of it works. So, for example, referee. We knew we wanted special guest referee in every match type, but getting it in every single match type isn't something that was achievable in a year. In fact, even getting special guest referee in one-on-one wasn't achievable in a year. We had to think about redoing all of the referee systems in 2K23 so that in 2K24 we could have special guest referee, and here we are in 2K25 with the referee and all sorts of match types. So it requires thinking ahead, but still making sure that in a single year we're delivering something that's exciting and new for people. Underground match is a great example of a brand new match type this year that required a ton of work. That was kind of the groundwork was laid in 2K24 and 2K23 with war games and some of our backstage interactions. So I think people can enjoy what we put into a game, and you also can kind of read into what we've done and imagine where that could take us into the future.
What are your picks to win the women's and men's Rumble matches this weekend?
Oh man, very hard question. For Rumble match, I'm going to say for the women's, I'm rooting for Bianca Belair. Always been a huge fan. Men's match, I've got my eye on CM Punk.
What's your WWE dream match?
Ooh, WWE dream match. Good. My dream matches are going to be different than most people would expect because I think I'm the most invested in superstars who have done work with us on the game. So when I see Wes Lee in NXT, LA Knight, killing it in the main roster, like these are people that we got to work with making our game, years back before they went to WWE. So, I mean, Wes Lee versus LA Knight would be an incredible WrestleMania main event, I think, and I would love to see it.
What do you think is the biggest misconception from an outsider looking at the game development business? Or like, what's the misconception you tell people, oh, I'm a combat designer, or I make video games?
It's hard to convey what it means to work on gameplay systems. I think it's easiest to talk with people who are not super familiar with game development or know it casually about like putting animations into the game. I mean, it's one of the coolest parts of our game is like I mentioned, working with wrestlers from all different companies, including WWE, to capture mocap animations. We have a state-of-the-art motion capture studio with a WWE ring that's set up, and we run through all sorts of moves, and not just move animations, but everything that happens in a ring, recoveries, strike reactions, taunts, just the way that people move and carry themselves in a ring, we want to capture accurately. And so being able to work directly with wrestlers who have devoted their lives to this and get a better understanding of how they think about wrestling in the ring and making sure we can translate that to the game is really rewarding. And finally seeing those animations come into the game and put them into our systems and get to see them shine. It's one of my favorite parts about this.
As a combat designer, how closely do you have to work for the animation team? There are a lot of grapples and holds in these games.
Absolutely, the gameplay team as a whole. I'm one small part of it. There's about 8 designers, I'm going to guess about 10 animators, a little more than 10 engineers. We have a big group of about 30 people that we meet with every day to make this game. And that's just the gameplay pod. I'm thinking about, when you're playing a one-on-one match all the way to Royal Rumble in like the standard play mode, that's what we're focused on. There's all sorts of other people. But yeah, we work directly with gameplay animators who are working with us every day on implementing these moves. There's a bunch of details that when we're in the motion capture stage, working with talent, that we want to make sure we get right, and we help convey that and work with the animators to make that shine in the game.
How did you go about becoming specifically a combat designer? Talk about your journey in game dev.
I had an interesting journey in game dev. As we were just mentioning before this, I happened to live already in Novato, where 2K was headquarters. So I had a rare opportunity to intern on MLB. 2K10 and MLB 2K12. And when I graduated, I got to come back, and we were no longer working on the MLB games, we were working on WWE games, which was completely new to me. But I had an opportunity to join the team and learn what wrestling's all about. Initially, I didn't think I was going to like wrestling, and fast forward, about 10 years now, and it's such a huge part of my life. I couldn't imagine working on anything else. So it was just kind of a steady start as an intern. I'll do anything I can to help, and I found a spot on gameplay, and it just really became passionate about it, and it's been what I've been doing for the last 10 years.
Did you go to school for game design and coding?
I did. I've always wanted to be a game developer. I didn't really know where in games I would work. I went to school for programming, actually. I have a computer science, computer game design degree from University of California, Santa Cruz, and I assumed that I was going to try and get into programming because that was my degree's focus, but I had this opportunity to work as an intern starting on WWE 2K15 and then 16 on gameplay, and design is absolutely where I want to be. And so I really, really enjoy my role, getting to work directly with engineers, directly with animators and designers, kind of in all facets of the gameplay team.
What advice would you give to future aspiring combat designers or just game developers, kids now that are maybe in high school that want to get into game design? What advice would you give to them?
It is make things. I think the most valuable thing you can do when you're trying to learn how to do game development work is make small projects and finish them from beginning to end. And I am a hypocrite in saying this because I am very bad at actually finishing a small side project, but the most talented and innovative designers I know are people who have been able to do that, who have been able to publish really small things, and you achieve a goal from beginning to end and then iterate on that. And eventually when you have a small collection of game projects you've made, there's so much you've learned over the course of that you couldn't have possibly seen from the beginning starting on those projects. And I think that also translates your skills really well to anybody else who wants to see what you can do. So yeah, small projects and collaborate with people.